Well, maybe I can get started here, just kind of a little pre-roll, as it were. So before we get in and get started, I'll just kind of introduce myself. And we've got our website up here, kind of giving maybe a quick introduction about the organization for anybody who doesn't already know. But I figured I would throw our About Us page here, about who our team is at Whitman Hanson Community Access. There's me up at the top. I'll talk a little bit about my background in a second, but since I do have two of my other staff here, I'll just quickly kind of scroll down through. We've got Ryan, who's not with us tonight, but we've also got here Rob in the back corner, working one of our two cameras. Rob's a Hanson resident as well. We've got Paul, who's been a long time working on mostly Whitman stuff, but he does both towns. We've got our Amanda Robinson here, who's our staff videographer and outreach specialist. We've got Nicole working the other camera here. Nicole's our staff videographer and does a lot to help us with our educational access. And then Kevin Tachi, who you might know, he's been around for a long time doing community media stuff for Whitman and Hanson and all across the South Shore. We've got a couple other videographers here and producers, James, Gabe, Guy, and Brian. I think Brian's also a Hanson resident. So I wanted to go through and just say this is our merry band of staff here that go around and cover the events in the community. And during COVID, we put together this presentation. We kind of took some of it from some of our colleagues and made some modifications for our purposes and some further modifications for today, where maybe there's not as much. You'll still see some things in here about social distancing and things like that. Obviously, there's not as much of a focus on having to work around some of those things, but there was some really great training and things that came out of that whole process. So I'll get into that in just a moment, but to kind of talk about my background, I've been working in community media pretty much since the year 2000, maybe even a little bit before that, doing video in high school, making the high school yearbook, video yearbook and all of that sort of thing. I'm an Eagle Scout, so community and civic engagement has been a big thing for my whole life. So when the opportunity came to work, I consider myself a real geek. So the chance to work in media and stringing cables, working cameras, doing community, it's a great blend. So I've been doing it here in Whitman and Hanson since the very beginning of 2017. Prior to that, I was in the town of Hingham. I was the founding executive director of HCAM, now Harbor Media over there. And we built a whole studio and facility there that was completely modernized and everything like that. No sooner did I get that done, and I moved down here to Whitman and Hanson, and we also have been doing a whole bunch of modernization with our facility. So today I'm going to be talking in my presentation about what was initially called, this used to be called guerrilla videography, but we thought that was a little, I don't know, it's a little too loose. But really that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about, as it says down the bottom, shooting where you are with what you have on a low to no budget, including some editing tools and things like that. So we're going to go through and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. In this training, we're also going to, we're going to talk about how to optimize audio and video, of course, how to compose well-created and curated shots, how to optimize the lighting that you have, kind of because generally when we're showing up somewhere with just our phone or some budget camera, we're really working with what we have. We're probably not bringing a big expensive lighting kit. We can make some discussion about storytelling techniques, and then we'll have a couple of software recommendations and some publishing options. Because at the end of the day, we are not only trainers that teach how to use this equipment, we're also a place that makes equipment available to people. And then all of that is in service of our mission to put that content onto the cable channels. And if you watch any of our stuff, you might also know that a lot of it goes to YouTube as well. So we'll talk about how we can be a partner in all of that. And to get started, we'll just jump right in on audio. The biggest thing about audio, as I stand here speaking into my wireless microphone, but even if I didn't have it, and I was standing in this room, I'm looking to minimize background interfering sounds. The air conditioning just turned off, so things sound great right now. You might even think about turning something like that off. Maybe you get a little bit hot for a minute, but maybe you're only shooting briefly, so you keep that sort of thing down. There's a picture of a fridge. Case in point, a fridge humming away in the background, you might not realize it, but it could be creating interference. Dogs barking, traffic driving by, mowing lawns, blowing leaves, any of these types of things, which is why, and at the end you'll hear me give a spiel about our studio. In professional video, we love to have places where we can take all of that out of the equation. You do your best. When you're going out and shooting with your phone, you do your best. Again, microphone when you can. That's a microphone too. A lot of times, even if you just have a set of wired headphones, wireless headphones, if you can just use that microphone plugged into your phone, it's still going to sound better. If you're going to do some video editing, which we'll talk about later, you can use one phone to capture the audio and the other one across the room to capture the happenings and stitch that together later. We've got some other tools there. That's called a lavalier mic. It clips on in a manner sort of like this one does. That one's wired, this one's wireless. We've got, with the red frame there, what we would call a shotgun microphone. And then, believe it or not, that little device next to that is called a dead cat, which is basically a wind muffle that just would go over a microphone like that, because wind noise is another thing that you want to try to minimize. Sometimes, if you have headphones plugged in and you can monitor it, even just turning the camera can be enough to cut that wind down. But again, if there's anything you can do to kind of block where that microphone is and the wind that might be going in, just an ankle sock pulled over the microphone, could be enough if it's not obstructing too much of the screen where you're trying to view, or obviously the lens where you're capturing through. The biggest thing with audio is to get close. If your microphone is mounted right to your camera and that's all you've got, try to get close. Of course, you're going to be able to show less of the space around the closer you get, but you're going to get cleaner sound, less interference the closer you get. Of course, you can still keep any of your social distance. Like I say, this comes from having been developed through COVID, but get close enough that you can get good audio. So now we move into talking about composition of shots. On the screen here, we've got basically a very rudimentary drawing of what we call the rule of thirds. In this example, you've got the horizon line, or maybe that's a beach in the background, right along the bottom, the tic-tac-toe board, the bottom third there. We've got the sun lined up not only on the top third, but also on the left third, and then the subject lined up on the right third. Now that you've seen this, take a look at any sitcom, take a look at pretty much anything you see on TV, the news, any of that, you'll notice that this is just what's aesthetically pleasing to us because it's what we've been raised with. And so you'll notice that that's the case. So if, as you're shooting video, you try to think in that way, not using the screen of the camera and putting somebody right directly in the crosshairs, but trying to line it up with that tic-tac-toe board instead, that's a big help. Think about how you're going to shoot. We hold our phones the way we talk on our phones. So a lot of people shoot this way. And the important part is, where will it be viewed? If you're going to be showing this to somebody on your phone, hey, take a look at this, then that might be the right way. If you want to put something that you're shooting onto YouTube, onto cable, if you want to put it in a display that's going to be on the wall in one of those photo frames, think about the way you're shooting it so you can minimize the blank space, the borders around the edge of that. So there are definitely times where you would shoot vertical if you're going to be posting something to Facebook or Instagram. But I think most of the time when you're trying to shoot more professional looking video, you're typically going to want to shoot in landscape. So speaking of shooting in landscape, the way you hold the phone makes a difference. All of these are good options. Good option number one is just a nice horizontally held shot like this. Problem with this is after a minute or two, you're going to start to get tired, and you'll start to get the dip and maybe a little what I call like seasickness with a little tilt like that. So a better version of that might be to brace your elbow against your torso and make sure you're not obstructing the lens area. And like this, you throw the other arm in here to give even further stability. And this is great. Add to this, leaning on a post, something like that, it's going to be even better. But the very best, speaking of leaning on a post, that is what's called a gorilla pod down the bottom. These are tripods you see in use behind you here in the room. Anything where you can just set that camera and take the human element out of it is going to be the best that you can do. I wouldn't worry too much necessarily about that being an overly static shot, because a nice consistent shot is, I think, the most important thing. And then you can make something a little bit more dynamic and interesting through the inclusion of other shots, what we call B-roll. But when you're capturing the A-roll, like me speaking right now, we want to just capture that with a nice steady shot. And then we would cut in maybe examples of what I'm talking about on top of that to give that a little bit more of a dynamic look. I don't know if that's going to work. No. So different types of video shots. Basically, we've got kind of 6 here that we speak very broadly about. Of course, there's a whole lot more, but these would be kind of your primary 6. You've got your extreme wide shot. This is usually used for like an establishing shot as you're getting started, maybe showing the area that you're talking about or where the scene is taking place. You've got a wide shot, which basically shows all of the action, but not a whole lot more of the landscape all around it. You've got the medium shot, which now you're starting to get some facial reactions and be able to kind of see the person a little bit closer. The medium close-up, now you can really, get to understand the personality of the person. The close-up, the closest you're really typically going to get, unless you're really pushing it, with an extreme close-up, which might be something that you're doing in order to show the shock. Like if you want to show that reaction or something like that, you might cut in that close-up shot. But generally speaking, you're going to establish your shot. You're probably not going to change it a whole lot, especially in a scenario like if somebody's speaking in the front of a room like this, or if you're, let's say you're shooting the graduation, you've got a family member that's crossing the stage. You're probably better off to just shoot that as wide, and then maybe cut in some other photos that perhaps another camera captures or something like that. In terms of camera movement, like I say, it's better to establish that shot. And I think that the most important thing here is to avoid zooming. You can pan side to side, capturing more of the action. Maybe as somebody's going by in a parade, that float, you can obviously pan and get the float going by. You can tilt up and down, show more of the sun, show more of the ground. That's all fine. But if you're going to zoom with your camera, most cameras, most cell phones, the lens does not move. It's not an optical thing where the 2 lenses are moving further away and actually optically zooming in on something. You are degrading the quality of the shot that you're getting. So if you zoom in, just expect that if you go into 2x, you are at half the quality that you started with. So better than zooming is moving your feet, getting a little bit closer. It's hard to show zooming on a still slide, but what we tried to do here is show that you can start fully wide, and then as you walk in, you can crop into a zoom more like you see in the example right there. So generally speaking, to make it concise, don't zoom, move your feet. In terms of lighting, lighting can make a huge difference. This shot here is really not going to be usable. You might say a brilliant narrative, but it's not going to be helpful, because while a picture's worth 1,000 words, if you don't have that picture, it's not going to hold attention. So the same shot, this is the same person in the same room, she's just shooting with the natural light, showing her in the shot above. And while the shot below might have, prettier leaves outside and landscape, things like that, I can't see the subject. I can't see her talking about what she's talking about in that shot. So we're going to want to go with the shot A instead of shot B. In general, and I don't know how well it produces here on this screen from your angle, but we have video exposure to consider. And that's where the lighting from the previous slide comes in. If you look at the top of the screen, even sort of around the gentleman's head there, you can see that it's just very dark. It's not very usable. There's no detail. You can't see. Is she wearing lipstick? I can't tell. Same thing here. So, something around the middle here is going to be better. So down the bottom might be too exposed and things start blending together as whites, whereas up top they're blending together as blacks. So there will be some cameras that are going to have that degree of control in them, but you may be downloading a third-party camera app and perhaps not the application that comes with your phone. Although iPhones are pretty impressive. I've seen some pretty good stuff that they can do. So software, like I said, advanced cameras, that can be something that you can do. This is one that's available on both Mac and Android, Filmic. It is, as you can see, it's got ISO, it's got shutter aperture adjustments. So you're able to hear, the sun is as much of a feature in this shot here as is the surfer. Here, obviously, there's a tremendous amount of light with all the snow reflecting everything, but you can still see all the hikers. So that's a very well-tuned shot that somebody has composed there. So look at what you can do with that, and it may be the case that you need something more than just the onboard camera that comes with your phone, but that's what the App Store is for. Storytelling is the next piece that's important. Here we just have a basic example of a storyboard. Basically, you don't need to be as good of an artist as this person is. Stick figures are fine. But you can see that basically if we go back to what we talked about with the different 6 types of shots, we've got a nice establishing shot here. if I'm guessing, I think that we're just looking here at, an apartment building or something. This family is walking towards there. Here's maybe a medium shot showing the sort of even-tempered nature of this individual as they're approaching the building. It looks like they're maybe turning their head. There's an arrow there. They see something. There's a reaction, exclamation points. They see this person in a hood. And then, maybe they look a little bit more menacing here as they get that close-up look. So we go back to those 6 initial shots. And here we can just kind of draw that out, maybe use some descriptive language in the lines underneath. There's a lot of great templates that are out there. I know a lot of times you're just capturing what's happening with your phone where you're going. But if there's a story you're trying to tell, perhaps just take a little bit of what we call pre-production and think, what do I want to capture? And just, even if you're simply only adding to what you're already doing, adding an establishing shot, that just shows a wide shot of where the event is happening. That can be just a wonderful addition. And then maybe a couple close-ups. Here, just before we started, we were shooting shots of the table back there with some of our marketing collateral on it. That might be a nice little piece to have at the end of our program here as we put this on air. In terms of storytelling basics, they're the same as when you're writing or reading a book as they are with telling a story on video. I put the shot of that bridge because I think it's the establishing shot of about every other movie that I watch, at least any of the ones that are placed in New York. So again, they always start wide, and then you zoom in, and then you actually get the story that's happening in an apartment in one of those buildings in the background of that shot. So you're going to have, just like this arc shows, you're going to basically, and as the burger there shows, you're going to kind of have your introduction, you're going to have some rising action, some crisis, the climax of that crisis, and then the denouncement of that crisis, and how it gets dealt with, and then the end. And the better you can tell that story in a more conversational way here, as it says down the bottom, try not to be that deer in the headlights, the better that's going to be. So if you can try to have that just as a conversation and not just be sort of reading off of cue cards type of thing, that's always going to be best. This is a unique example. I want to kind of show this going back to what we had here with kind of the arch and looking at the way that we're doing the storytelling and making it kind of conversational. And I'll just leave you with this example here. I hope the sound works on this. I do not know if it will.
This man right here is my great-grandfather. He's the first cat herder in our family. Herding cats. Don't let anybody tell you it's easy.
See, we've got B-roll shots. We've got the A-roll that's being stitched together, telling the story. Examples, holding up photos.
Probably about the toughest thing I think I've ever done.
I got this one this morning, right here. And if you look at his face, they just ripped to shreds,
You see the movies, you hear the stories, it's unbelievable. Not everyone can do what we do.
I wouldn't do nothing else.
It ain't an easy job, but when you bring a herd into town and you ain't lost for one of them, you ain't feeling like in the world.
So I show that example. I went too far. I show that example to basically to show here that just using, going back to the beginning, we have a whole variety of different shot types. We're using the B-roll. We've got what we call that A-roll, which is the storytelling. There's numerous different people telling that story. If we go back to here, you might have, interview A, this person's going to talk about this. Interview B, they're going to talk about this. And then you just start thinking about what those shots are. A lot of times how we do it when we're going out filming is we'll just let the A-roll happen, and we'll either sit there and take notes as it's happening or go back to the edit room, watch the video, make a list, go out and get those shots. So that's a good thing to do. And it is a way to kind of step up the existing shooting that you're doing, not just capturing the happenings in front of you, but then asking yourself, how can I supplement this? Can I go back and get some close-ups that I could cut in some software? So that is where we go next, as you might have seen by my advancing the slide, is that this is just one example. If you Google basically free mobile editing software, you'll find stuff that can go right on the same device that's shooting that video, whether it be iPhone, Android, Windows, or just Mac or PC. Adobe Premiere, without the Rush CC part, is a software it is a paid software that's available that you can use. It's a professional software. This Rush CC has a free version. This is something you could use, and you basically see here, what are we talking about? We're just stitching up a bunch of photos next to each other. Here's a B-roll that's gonna go on top. My sense is that, what would happen here is this is probably gonna be like a travelogue where there's gonna be some music put down underneath it. Here's your different shots. But again, this could have been interview A, interview B, interview C, B-roll all across it, and that's what you're gonna get. And then here's your playback. So you'd put what we call the play bar back here, hit play, you're gonna watch what it looks like, and it's multi-layered. So it doesn't have to be intimidating if you haven't played with any of that type of software. And there's some wonderful free versions out there. WHCA has some other resources on our website that you can download, including full, effectively what would be professional software that is actually made free. The name of the software for anybody who wants to write it down is DaVinci Resolve. And that's something that's completely free for all users, as long as your computer can keep up. Because sometimes you are doing some heavy editing with that, at least if you're getting multiple layers of complexity. Yeah.
Do you guys use Adobe Premiere?
We don't. I have some employees who do. We're Final Cut Pro House. Yeah. And we use DaVinci Resolve because the fact that it's free and the fact that we can come here and tell you can go out and download DaVinci Resolve, we want to know it well enough to answer those questions. So we challenge ourselves to be, I guess you might say, bilingual in that.
So where do we go to download DaVinci Resolve?
You can probably just Google it or any search engine to find that.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I'll go to our website, see if I can find where we've got a bunch of resources sort of beyond this class that might be like downloads and additional training you can look at. So I'll show you that in a moment as well. Once you've made your content, we know that we're just one option that you could post to. We hope you'll consider us first because we want to be your partner in optimizing how that content looks and sounds and displays and the reach that it gets. When you post your stuff with us or you put it on cable, there's nothing saying you can't put it on YouTube or any other platform as well. And we've made it very simple to do. So even if you produce something outside of our studio, we've actually got this page that's on our website. If any of you have seen like some of the municipal meetings of some of the boards and committees, they're just taking an audio recorder like this one and recording the happenings of the meeting and then sending us the file right through the same page, drag and drop, you send us the file, and then we work with it there from there and we put it onto our channel and we handle all that complex back end of getting it onto the cable system.
So do you have to reach out to you before you submit something?
No, if you actually go to that page, it's not quite as simple as this. There is a form that just, you put your name, a little description of what you're sending us, your email address so that we can follow up with any questions. There might be phone number too, I don't recall. And then it's as simple as just uploading that content. And it can just go. If it's ready to go, there is a box that says that it complies with our policies and procedures because we do have some rules about what can and can't air. But yeah, it's super simple. And you weren't here at the very beginning when I started, but this all came about because during COVID, we had basically closed our studio. We didn't have anybody coming in and taking out equipment, certainly not using our studio and control room and edit labs and any of that type of space for a year, maybe more. So this was the way that we could keep that production happening. Was that we had people that were shooting just the events. I mean, maybe it was their grandkids playing a board game in their living room. And we were like, great, it's content. That's what content looked like in 2020. So we were happy to have it.
Do you have parameters of certain things that like sports or certain things you want and certain you don't want? Or?
No, I mean, you could pretty much expect. I mean, it's generally, we don't want like, lewd content and stuff like that. But I mean, no, anything, I mean, we joke as a staff about, it's like marketing the blank piece of paper. Like you could write a poem on that piece of paper. You could draw a picture on that piece of paper. It's really anything. So you can create anything and send it to us. You can use our equipment to create anything and, work with us to have that posted with us and elsewhere. Destinations like this, for example. Dropbox is actually what is making the box in the previous screen work. So when you submit your content to us, you're actually uploading it to Dropbox. We get a notification that there's new content there for us. But Dropbox is a great way to just share stuff maybe with your family. So, if you shot, let's just say that like you used that little tripod that I showed you at the beginning of this and you shot the dance recital that's happening at the Indian Head School. That's fine. You just put it in Dropbox. You don't even have to put it in YouTube because maybe some of those kids didn't want to be, YouTube famous. You put it in Dropbox and you can send it out to grandma and grandpa out in the West Coast. So that's pretty neat. Vimeo and YouTube are more, video distribution platforms. There's a bunch more like it. Facebook, people are probably familiar with as well. You can post video to any of those places, but again, we like to be a curation spot for Whitman and Hanson content and put it with other content like it, and then also hopefully inspire other people in the community to, if they see somebody's doing a cooking show, they say, oh, I might like to do a cooking show. So we try to kind of curate all that content. In creating this slideshow, these were some of the resources that we used. This entire slideshow is on our website, clickable. So you can go through, you can copy and paste anything, you can click links, and this is a relatively dynamic show that we update and we give this spiel somewhat often. So this will be developing, and you can feel free to circle back with this if you have any other questions. So that's us, like I said at the very beginning, Whitman Hanson Community Access. Our contact information is there, our website is there. It's great just having to type in the 6 letters, WHCA.tv. People do sometimes forget what the acronym stands for, but it's just Whitman Hanson Community Access, and you can just think of it as we give access to the community, to the cable station, and to the equipment to make the programs that go on the channel. We're on all of the social media platforms you see there. We're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, X, formerly Twitter, and YouTube, and probably even more locations than that. And then, as I did mention, the website, we do have some resources, I think, up here under services. And so, if it'll stay, yeah. So here it is, shooting video on your phone. It's basically a link to this. We've got a camera kit tutorial for the kits like you see here, and I've actually got one here I thought I might set up next to show you the step beyond your phone and how small of a step it really is in terms of understanding that. And then we've got LinkedIn Learning, if you don't know, right through the library, actually through Boston Public Library, which any Massachusetts resident can also become a member there. You get access to LinkedIn Learning, which is a wonderful resource because not only can you take training in things like video, probably on how to thread your sewing machine, whatever it might be, or how to any sort of thing. It's amazing how much stuff they have there. And oh yeah, all sorts of different ones. And probably Premiere, yeah. So if you click into that, for example, I don't have the optimal surface here, but if you go there, it's just like a little how-to in terms of signing up at the Boston Public Library for that. And then there's a link here about how to do that. It basically brings you to their page. And this is just something that we figured out that our staff uses. And we're like, this is great. Let's share this with more people. Because again, like we can give you this little training that kind of talks about some of that, but like I spoke for a minute and a half maybe about shot composition. I bet you there's a 45-minute class on shot composition on LinkedIn Learning. So any of the things that I talked about, like that might be a great place to go for a further deeper dive. You will just have to kind of go through the steps of registering for that. So we've got some other stuff on our website. Obviously you can look around. Our watch page has our different channels and of course the different recently produced content. Down the bottom, we've always got the very most recent thing up the top, and then everything else chronologically that we've updated to YouTube, and not all of it goes there. Some of the stuff, if say, for example, the Calvary Baptist Church does their services, but they have their own YouTube channel, it doesn't show up here on our page because it goes to their channel, but it's out there. So there's a bunch of this content. Like I said, there's a lot of other services, ways you can get involved. I just wanted to quickly show that. You can do promotional opportunities if you have some event or cause that is important to you. You have promotional opportunities through us. If you just have a creative itch and you want to get involved, come along, do like my colleagues are doing here and film something. You can join our crew call and you might even be able to come along and help us film town meeting or graduation or anything like that. We're a volunteer organization. We have staff, but the philosophy of community media and cable access is that it's really volunteer based. So we've got event coverage and crew call. You can create your own program, whether that be event coverage. Here's a camcorder, like I said, more than your cell phone out doing that sort of thing, whether you join us on a crew or you want to try your hand at going and doing it yourself. We've created this menu here of programs that you can create a single episode of, so you don't need to commit to 100 episodes or even 3 for that matter. You can just come in and make one episode of, say for example, we have a show, Outdoor Adventures. Maybe you want to walk us through a park that you enjoy and put a microphone on and just talk about what you see. come in and do that. We'd be happy to have you. We have internships, and we have the equivalent of an internship for someone who isn't enrolled in college, who just is looking for a structured experience, that they get to touch a bunch of different corners of the video operation. So those are all things that are available through our office, and we'd welcome anybody to get involved. So if you do come to our page and you go to this Get Involved, you can click the button here at the bottom. It's going to bring you to a web form for your basic intake information, maybe give us an idea of what your goals are, and that kicks off the conversation how we can do more and working together. So I'd be happy to take some questions, or if you want, I was going to take a minute, like I said, and just show you the process of setting up a camera like you see in the back of the room here, just to show you, again, it's not much of a step additional in terms of what you have to do. If you want to take it even a level higher into what we would kind of call the prosumer equipment. All right, so if you're shooting with your phone and you say that's great, but you want to step up your quality just a little bit further, here's a basic tripod. I'm only going to put one stage of these legs down just for simplicity. It's as simple as that. This has what we call a fluid head. So I can move it around like this. There's a little bubble level so that I can center in there, and once it's centered, because if I'm shooting outside on the beach, then it may not sit exactly flat on the ground. We've got a couple adjustment knobs here for some of the areas that we might be adjusting to, our tilt, and then our pan. This here is what's called the tripod mounting plate, and it just goes on the bottom of a camcorder, such as this. Small, not a lot bigger than your phone, but it does have an optical lens, so you can zoom in on something like this. Just threads in. So you just get it in there tight enough that it's not going to move once you get it set up, but you don't need to be Hercules either. And then it just slides in. Sometimes you do have to press this little red button to keep it, it's a safety so that it doesn't slide out and fall on the ground and smash that lens. And then we have a little safety lock over here that just keeps it now totally firm. Once that's done, it's not going to move around. And that's pretty much it. So this camera now is ready to shoot just as your phone would, but you do have, on this, I believe it's a 10x optical zoom. You're now shooting in 4K. You have fold-out display. Your microphone's built in right here. And then you might have seen me just close a flap on the side here. You do actually have, this is what makes it a prosumer, not a consumer camera, is you actually have an input where if you wanted to take, say like a wireless audio kit like I'm wearing here, and put the transmitter with the speaker and the wireless microphone, we'll plug into that, and then take the receiver and plug that in here. What we usually would do is just poke that into the hand strap, because I'm not carrying it by hand now, it's sitting in a tripod. Take the output into the input, and now you've got perfect audio that, yeah, if a truck drove right behind me, you might hear that, but you're going to get a nice, crisp, clear cut in with that. So with something like this, I would say 90% of what you see on our channel, at least on our public channel, is shot with equipment like this. We do have some larger, more professional cameras that you can move into as well that are also available for checkout. We have, I wouldn't even call it membership because it's completely free, so we just call it volunteers. But we would love to see people come in and, kind of be part of our team, be part of our crew. And the commitments, as you saw on the Get Involved page, can be, I want to do a one-off program. I want to cover this event. I want to experiment. I want to try to make something. Like, we'll see what happens with it. We're here to be a resource and to try to get people engaged in media, informed and educated about how to use media, how to intelligently consume media, which is obviously an important thing these days as well. We've got a wonderful amount of equipment. I could have brought more. We've got wireless intercoms for headsets so that, when my staff here could communicate with each other about let's have person A zoom in and get a close-up. I should show you back on our webpage. I just snapped a couple quick photos before coming in. Our new studio. So we just finished modernizing our studio. And so here I go to the happenings page. This is actually where you'll find tonight's presentation. And if you're watching this at a later time, this is a chronological thing, so it may end up getting a bit more buried under some other content. But you can click right into this thumbnail here or into the title over here, and it will bring you into this. But I wanted to quickly show you our new studio. It was a bit of a mess, but it's certainly been worse. We did a cookie review show in there, and we were mopping up milk and cookies afterwards. But that's the thing. You got a blank piece of paper, you know? Art's not always neat. But we have fun with it. And the reason I wanted to show this shot from this angle is, you know, take note of the studio lighting up the top. We can optimize the look to be anything. You can't see in this shot, but there's a green screen that we can pull into there. We could have you standing on the surface of the moon. But most importantly is these cameras that are mounted to the wall. Just like you see in the town hall settings, maybe in some of the town auditoriums. We did that because we don't want people to be intimidated about, well, I don't want to come down to the studio. I don't have a crew. You don't need a crew. If you have an idea, we've got a chair and we've got props that we can put out there to dress the space for you. And then we can just go back there and press 1, 2, 3, 4 and take whichever cameras we need to. I don't know if I can see it in this picture, but there's a camera up in the ceiling here somewhere as well. So if you were doing a demo down on this table, we can show what you're doing the demo with your hands or whatnot. We've got a more traditional camera here, like you saw that I took out of here as well. We got the ability to put a teleprompter on there, so if you have a prepared message you want to work with. And then we've got our control room. Again, fully modernized, just recently updated. Went from having these big giant racks, 4 or 5 of them, to now everything basically being computer based. And now we have 1/2, maybe even 1/3 of a rack that everything lives in. We've got the editing machine here right next to it. We've got 6 more of these out in the space behind where this picture is taken. And we've got the full lighting control here. Do you know how many channels that is, Rob? It's got to be, I think that there's like 30 lights, 20, 30 lights in that other room. We can change the color on most of those lights. So if you want that gray curtain to look purple, no problem. We've got the dual monitors here for being able to put up all your camera previews. We can have graphs that show the lighting levels and all that. Don't be intimidated by this. This is for my staff to know how to operate, for all of us to use. And we just bring the talent in here. That said, if this interests you and you'd like to get your hands dirty in here, that's a possibility too. But it doesn't need to intimidate you. Like I said in the previous picture, that's why we put in the robotic cameras. That's in Whitman.
That's the same location.
South Ave, yep. Right by the post office in downtown Whitman. So that's kind of my spiel. Like I said, we've really worked a lot since I came on in 2017 to really institutionalize the operation there. Make sure that everybody, all the staff has different email addresses. If you do go to the About Us page, we've got, sort of departmental email addresses as well. So if you have a relationship with a particular person, you don't know if they're still there, you can email, if you're talking about doing a bulletin board to go on our channel, you just email bulletin boards. It's going to go where it needs to go. You can just do general, we've got info@whca.tv, or you can go over to the Connect tab for that as well. We've got a newsletter, as you see there, which you can subscribe to. So we've got a lot of information on this site, not just the content that we capture. And if this is something that interests you and you'd like to take it beyond just what you can do with your phone, we'd love to have you. We'd love to have, robust content on the channel. A, what you just go out and create, but B, we're happy to set you up with any equipment like this. And I guess at this point, we'll be happy to take any questions that folks might have.
So if somebody shoots content that's not taking place in Whitman,
Yep.
it's not all the time in Whitman.
Still fine. My opinion has been, we're a nonprofit organization with a board of directors, and the board agrees, I guess, with my vision on this is if it serves the towns of Whitman and Hanson, which if I went out and shot a documentary about the Boston Harbor Islands, is that not within reach for all of us? So again, during COVID, that Outdoor Adventures show that I mentioned, one of the first episodes was Pond Meadow Park in Braintree, because I had an employee who was living in Braintree at the time, and it was like, hey, shoot where you are. And some people weren't getting outside at all. So at least they got outside through their television, and they walked around this park, and they said, yeah, you know what, maybe when the time is right for me, I'm gonna get out and walk around, and I'm gonna see that same dam that he just showed me in this video. So that's the concept, yeah. As long as it serves the towns of Whitman and Hanson, or if it is just nondescript. We've had some people come in that just want to do like a cartoon. You can't tell where that's based. It's just a creative item that is made by somebody in Whitman or Hanson. But truthfully, we'll take anybody. We also are members of an organization called Mass Access and another organization called the Alliance for Community Media. That's a state level and then national level trade organization and advocacy group for places like Whitman, Hanson Community Access. And we belong to content sharing servers for those places. And so if we go on and we say, I'd like to have like a cooking block on the channel, we'll go in there and we'll fish around and we'll look and we'll say, oh, here's a good one, cooking with grandkids. And here's another one, tasty treats or, whatever. And we'll just put together a little block. Now, we would rather that be local content here in Whitman and Hanson. And just as soon as somebody steps forward and says, I want to make cooking with grandkids here in Hanson, fantastic. We'll do that.
The inverse of that is if he makes a show, puts it on,
We have some of that.
other communities can take it and.
Yeah. Richard Rosen in Whitman, he's a former selectman. He's been around for a long time. People probably know his name. He's also a beekeeper. He does a show, The Buzz Around Bees, and it goes up to that server, national level, and it plays in California. It plays on all different corners of the United States.
He's got a new movie too.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
No, beekeeper.
Oh, okay, yeah. So it does go both ways, which is a nice change. And it's not we call it community media now. Cable access sort of maybe took on a little bit of an amateur persona or expectation sort of through the 90s. Maybe some people might put the word Wayne's World in there or the movie title that. We're not that. We try to be modern. We try to be professional. I think you see by the content out on our channels, not only the stuff that we make as a staff, but the stuff that we help the people in the communities make. And that's really where that community media comes in. It's sort of a rebranding of that. And again, we'd be happy to work with anybody that has a vision or even just an appetite for that vision that may not even have manifested yet. And help bring that to reality. Yeah.
Those free software, video editing softwares you were talking about,
Yeah.
how do they compare to like iMovie?
So iMovie, Windows Movie Maker, and I think Microsoft may have just also acquired another cloud editing platform called Clipchamp. I don't know if they've rebranded it yet, but that's kind of a neat thing as well. They're very entry level. So just like this course, which is sort of the basics of, it's going to be capable, but you're going to reach a certain point where either it's going to become too arduous to try to do that advanced task that you're trying to do, or it's going to be paywalled. Where like you can do that in the premium version. And I think that once you reach that point on something like iMovie, if you're talking iMovie and you're talking the Apple environment, Final Cut Pro is $300. To buy what that paywall is, it just makes sense to go to the Pro version. And you go to something like we have under the Get Involved tab here, Services tab, and the resources, and you take that training on Final Cut, And the other thing, too, that was great for Apple stuff is you could go and take the training right in the Apple Store with the Genius. You could book a time to do that. So that's part of the reason for us that when we made that choice that we went to Final Cut versus something like Premiere Pro. I could have still done a Premiere Pro class here, but the ability to walk into the Apple Store over at Derby Street at South Shore Plaza and just ask your question was too good of a deal to pass up. So that would be my thought about iMovie, and kind of the same for Windows Movie Maker is that I think at a certain point, like it's good to cut your teeth on something like that, but at a certain point, just kind of pick what you back, maybe do a little bit of research what's out there. The most important motivator for me when I choose that stuff is I want to go somewhere that has a good kind of support forum. So a good place for me to ask that question, a good amount of training resources, a good YouTube too. I like to say that I went to YouTube University. I also went to Bridgewater State, but half of what I know is from YouTube, probably more. So that's great too. So I think that if you are going to, decide beyond the free software what you want to back, I would just look and see what's out there, what has the best community that's going to serve you. Anyone else? Yeah.
I'm curious. So say I never become efficient with videos.
Yeah.
But would your station be interested in, like we live, few of us, live in Stonebridge Commons.
Okay.
And we've got, say, during the fundraisers for the food pantry
Sure.
or something like that. Would you be interested in just being notified if somebody wanted to come down?
Yeah, we look at things like this calendar here for the senior center, for the library. We put them all in an internal document that we call leads, local events and developing stories. So if you have a lead for us about something that might be out there, subject to staff availability, we're usually looking for things that are out there. If we don't have the availability to get there, we'll say, we can give you one of these. And we'll say, do you think you could come down and, just take the 10, 15 minutes of sort of what I went through with something like this to see how it operates. And even if you don't have the time or the bandwidth to stand behind it during that event because you're going to be busy at the table doing whatever it is that's happening, this camera shoots in 4K. Our channels are HD at best. In fact, you might have noticed that on Comcast they're not. They're even standard definition. We're working on that. But it's not just, they're not even, they're 480. And that's a restriction from Comcast that we're very aware of. And it just boils down to the fact that for them to give that bandwidth to every city and town was too much for them. So we're still in standard def. All the content you see on our website, and the reason it's there is because it's in high def there. But nevertheless, when you shoot with a camera like this, if they couldn't make it tonight, my staff that's here, I would have just put the camera in the back of the room and I would have 4X cropped in. What did I say at the beginning? Zoom with your feet. When you're shooting at 4,000 resolution, 4K, you can zoom in 4X and still be HD. So that's a nice trick too. In fact, one of the other bits of equipment I might have brought today is a camera that shoots, and we have 3 of these, that shoots in 4K, and then you just have an iPad or your phone, and you just like tap where you want it to go. And there's even an auto director where you just put the camera in the back of the room, and then I'm up here walking around, and the AI in it just knows where I am, cuts it together. Sound, I'm still gonna wanna pipe something in, wireless microphone like this. But again, yeah, there's some great options for that. So to your initial question, yeah, we would definitely be interested in something like that. We can't always say yes, but we can always serve you in some way with that. You're welcome.
So you're recording like SD cartridges?
Yep.
And how, 4K, how long? How
Depends on the size of card we put in there. We're generally putting in 32 gigabyte cards, and we're probably like an hour and a half, 2 hours of capacity. But you could throw in a 64, 128. I don't quite trust 256s yet, and then get a lot more. And you'd also, if you know you don't need that 4K, turn it down. Turn it down to what you do need, and then get enough time. All the menus inside of these have the ability to dial down the bit rate. And so if you know that, well, if you're shooting a football game, you're going to want a higher bit rate. But if you're shooting a performance on a stage, maybe an orchestra, the moves are maybe a violin's bow, going back and forth. So you don't need to have as high of a bit rate. You can experiment with things like that. But again, we're going to equip anybody that comes in with a setup that they won't have to mess with any of that. And then, you also have to realize that sometimes when you go in and do that, it can be ready to go out the door, and then you're standing there at the shoot, you go, oh shoot, what did I change? Now it's not going to work. So, we still try to have like a reset button. And the other thing that's somewhere on this page, I won't try to find it now in the hot seat, but we have the instruction manuals for these cameras posted right to the website as well. So that if you get there and you have trouble, in fact, in most of our camera kits is a little card that has a QR code. So right with your phone, you scan the QR code, and then there's the manual, and you quickly scroll to your section. How do I reset the bit rate, of the camera? So that'll, handy things like that. Little things we found along the way to make the process easier. Anyone else? All right, well, thank you so much for coming. We'll be breaking down the cameras and stuff for a few minutes after here. So if you have any other questions you want to talk individually or any ideas, concepts you want to float by us, any of us would be happy to talk to you.